The following story takes place in the year 1988. I had just got off the phone with Dennis. He had left a message on my answering machine to give him a call about my coming over that day. When I called him back, he asked if on the way, I could stop at the local swap meet and pick him up a San Francisco Giants jersey and a pair of blue Nike Cortez shoes and he'd pay me back. I knew his sizes in the shoes and clothes, so I told him this would not be a problem. Dennis often worked from home and kept late hours, so he often didn't get a chance to venture out and do a lot of shopping unless it was on the weekend. And the weekends were usually reserved for running errands in the daytime and parties in the nighttime. At the height of the crack era, everyone around me seemed to be making money. And this was either through direct sales of this new superdrug, or being indirectly involved with it, either by shipping, packing, preparation, or subletting a house or apartment where it would be sold. I was naturally scared to get involved with it. I'd seen that along with the rivers of money that came with the drugs, it had also triggered an arms race in Los Angeles between the gangs and even the drug dealers. The distributors not only consigned the drugs they gave the dealers, they also handed over guns. Military-issue guns. And this wasn't because they loved the dealers. The distributors handed over those weapons so the street dealers could defend themselves, which meant defending the merchandise. The crime rates, especially murder rates, increased in proportion to where the news reports sometimes sounded mythical with the numbers killed. 27 dead in a weekend, 11 being killed in a day, 44 in a local neighborhood on the weekend. It sounded like another world. I could no longer remember or recognize the West Coast I'd grown up with that was not a gang and drugs battlefield. I made a firm intention to never be part of that world. As promised, I got to the Slauson swap meet, got in and out with Dennis's stuff and started quickly weaving in and out of traffic towards Dennis's house off South Hoover Street near Vermont. Once safely parked, I grabbed the clothes in the bag and headed to the door and gave the screen a good 3 bangs and shook it. The noise that black screen door with the bars on it made could be more easily heard than my knock on the wooden door, and Dennis had locked the screen so I had to use it. The brown wooden door swung open and there was Dennis, grinning broadly. Dennis said, "That was quick, I was only just on the phone with you." Dennis nodded to me while opening the screen door and ushering me in the house. I told Dennis the traffic had been light and that it was a good day, blue skies and all, so I was in and out before anything could happen. I swung the bag in my right hand over to Dennis so he could look at it. He took it from my hand, opened it, looked inside and smiled. "Thanks, cuz," Dennis said in appreciation. He waved me over to the coach. Dennis told me, "Sit down, man. I've got Donahue on. Something about racism in America. I'm about to take a shower and get changed. Just chill out for a while." I thanked him and sat in front of the television to find out what Phil Donahue was debating about. I knew Dennis would be a while. He always did his work in the back, most likely bagging up his product for distribution on the street. He said he felt dirty after, and always took a shower. After the shower, he would always put on his new clothes and style his Jerry curl. He took great pride in his personal appearance, sometimes changing 3 or 4 times in a day. He was making that much money, sometimes he'd wear an outfit one time and then give it away. I got into Phil Donahue's show, but I heard a slight bump against the door outside, or was it beside the door? I looked out the window facing onto the front lawn and into the street just in time to see it. And what I saw was not good. Outside were police organized in small groups wearing flak jackets. There were 4 of them huddled around what looked like a black tree stump with grip handles on it. There was an armored vehicle not far off from them with men hanging onto the sides and their feet braced on footstands for extra grip. The 4 men picked up the stump and started charging straight for the door to Dennis's house. I thought of getting up and warning Dennis, but before I could even do anything, something came in through the window, breaking the glass and filling the room with something that burned my eyes and started popping. Was this a flashbang? I fell to the floor and tried to shield my eyes from what was coming in. It burned. The door flew open with a mighty crash and the police spilled inside, hollering and screaming with guns pulled and pointed in all directions. There was a roar of so many voices I didn't even know what was going on. With all the yelling and shouting, I could only just about make out the command to get down on the floor and not move. I was kicked, rolled around on the floor and kicked some more while I could hear more footsteps coming into the house. I could barely speak and was coughing from all the smoke. They'd also knocked the wind out of me. "Who the fuck is Dennis?" they kept screaming. "I'm not Dennis!" I shouted back. and in the chaos of all this, other officers had seconded it. I kept shouting that I was not Dennis, and they kept asking me who was Dennis, but they would not allow me to answer. I tried to roll into a seated position with my hands in my lap to plead my case, but I felt the police knight stick on my back and legs, and this convinced me to stay as I was currently. Another officer yelled with his rifle pointing down at me and the others nodding, as if they had somehow found some mystery guy that had never been seen. The officers kept a firm eye on me while a group among them was motioned to fan out in the house and secure the property. I could hear Dennis shouting and screaming in the other room and the same sounds of wood and metal hitting flesh and bone as he was pummeled to the ground. Now they'll finally get to know the answer to this question of all ages. Who is Dennis? I heard a voice in the back shout triumphantly, "We got Dennis!" I tried to calm myself by closing my eyes and tuning into the words of Phil Donahue, which was still blaring in the background. Thanks, Phil. Eventually, the officers pulled me off the ground, took pictures of myself, Dennis, kilos of white powder which I rightly guessed was cocaine. They smiled while posing next to us and the merchandise. It was like these guys were hunters, and they'd caught some several point moose, brought it down, and were now posing next to it, antlers and all. The thought crossed my mind to tell them that I was innocent and was not involved in any of this. But I knew this was not the time to speak. We were hurried outside and there we saw some guys in suits, a few in flak jackets but all of them with Gore-Tex boots on underneath. They grabbed Dennis while the officers took hold of me and then handed me over. Damn! These are federal guys. Just how much stuff was Dennis mixed up in? When stuff was presented to me in the interview room and they showed me the document, nothing ruins your early morning more than this. I saw the big letters, United States of America versus, and then Dennis's name and mine right after. I felt cold, as if all the blood from the top of my body went into my feet. Good thing I hadn't eaten anything yet. I think I would have loaded my pants. I informed them that I had nothing to do with anything. I was just visiting a friend and that I needed to make a phone call and get a lawyer. Dennis, a true friend, got my name taken off the case and explained to them in detail about how I had nothing to do with any of his business. He explained that I was just a 14-year-old young man who'd come over to his house, dropped off some clothes and was watching Phil Donahue. I had no idea about anything, and his business operation was his and his alone. I could see the disappointment in the face of the officers as I had to be removed from the case and set free. I will never forget what happened. As Dennis's case progressed, I would show up to every court date as support and try to make eye contact with him, which he would and acknowledge with a nod. The sentencing was the heaviest burden. Dennis was put away for football numbers. As the war on drugs progressed in the Reagan era, anyone involved with the drug trade was given wild sentences, and Dennis was just one example of that. When you tack on that other stuff Dennis had been guilty of and the crimes he was involved with, it would mean I would not see Dennis for the next 30 or more years. The moral of this whole thing is you don't know what could happen when you're mixed up with someone in some bad business. Even if it's your friend and you have no part in it, just being there can land you in hot water. Being at the wrong place at the wrong time is real. If you enjoy these videos and what we do here, subscribe to the High Class Gear channel, give us a like, and hit the notification bell so you always get updates on new content every week. Stay safe out there.